Do you remember when a car wasn't just a car? It was the only trophy a black family was allowed to own in public. When the whole neighborhood knew your daddy had made it, not because he said a word about it, but because on Sunday morning, you all pulled up to church in something so long, so shining, so impossibly beautiful that it didn't need an introduction. That was a different kind of wealth, a kind that ran on chrome and dignity and 500 cubic inches of defiance. And almost every one of those cars and the dreams they carried is just gone. Today, we are counting down 20 of them, and by the end, you're going to feel something you haven't felt in a long, long time. You have to understand what America looked like in 1960 to understand why these cars meant what they meant. See, redlining locked black families out of the neighborhoods where property values climbed. Country clubs had their policies. Restaurants had their counters. Hotels had their policies. Every door that money should have opened was bolted shut, except one, the car lot. And once that door cracked open, Black America walked through it with intention. Smithsonian historian Fath Davis Ruffins put it plainly. In a society where black families couldn't build wealth through real estate, the automobile became the sanctuary on wheels. A Cadillac parked outside your door said what Jim Crow tried to silence forever. Today, we're exploring 20 cars every black senior dreamed of owning in 1960, machines that carried a generation's worth of hope, sweat, and hard-won dignity, and most of which are gone forever. Let's start with the one that started everything. The Cadillac Coupe de Ville. You already know the name. You probably already felt something just hearing it. In the 1960s, this was the car, not one of the cars, the car. Mary Wilson of the Supremes said it so simply it hurts. As soon as a writer, producer, or performer got his first check, it was as good as endorsed over to the local Cadillac dealership. The 1959 DeVille came with those legendary razor-sharp tail fins and a 390 cubic inch V8 pushing 325 horsepower, and it cost $5,252, which in 1960 dollars represented more than a full year and a half of the median black family's entire earnings. 16 months of income, just for the sticker price. And people saved for it anyway. They sacrificed for it, because the 1968 version, with that 472 cubic inch V8 producing 375 horsepower and 525 foot-pounds of torque, sitting on a 129-inch wheelbase, all 224 inches of it gleaming in cotillion white or Grecian gold. That wasn't a car. That was a declaration. Cadillac sold 164,472 DeVilles in 1968 alone. And on Sunday mornings, in parking lots from Bronzeville to Sweet Auburn, they lined up like a congregation of their own. The DeVille name died in 2005. That specific feeling. There is no replacement. It was the DeVille's older, flashier sibling that men pointed at from the sidewalk and didn't speak, just watched. The Cadillac Eldorado Biarritz convertible of 1959 wore the tallest tail fins ever mounted on a production automobile, twin bullet taillights, and a sticker price of $7,400, roughly $80,000 in today's money. Only 1,320 were ever built. By 1970, and the Eldorado carried the largest production V8 engine ever fitted to an American car, 500 cubic inches, 400 horsepower, 550 foot-pounds of torque. It was a physical experience before it was a drive. Isaac Hayes received a custom gold-plated 1971 Eldorado from Stax Records with a fur-lined interior, a television, and a refrigerated bar. Chuck Berry's personal 1973 Eldorado convertible now sits in the Smithsonian's National Museum of African American History and Culture, exactly where it belongs. The Eldorado ran from 1953 to 2002. 50 years, then silence. Now, let's talk about the car the neighborhood called something no manufacturer ever put on a badge. The Buick Electra 225, the deuce and a quarter, named for its 225-inch overall length. It earned that street name through the same genius Black America applied to everything, taking something corporate and making it ours. One automotive writer asked the question best: how black is that? We deuce and a quartered McDonald's into Mickey D's. The 1959 Electra 225 started at $3,795, about $1,500 less than a Cadillac DeVille, and it came with a 401 cubic inch nailhead V8 producing 325 horsepower and 445 foot-pounds of torque. By 1970, that motor had grown to 455 cubic inches and 370 horsepower. And here's the detail that separated the initiated from everybody else: four chrome venti ports on the front fender instead of three. If you knew, you knew. Prince sang about his. A craft brewery in Atlanta was named after it by a founder, honoring his grandfather's 1959 model, which served as the mobile office of a civil rights leader. The deuce and a quarter name ended in 1990, but it never really left. The Lincoln Continental of 1961 to 1969 was something else entirely. Not louder, but quieter, more deliberate. When every other car in America was adding chrome and fins and decoration, Lincoln's designers did the opposite. They removed everything that wasn't necessary. What remained were clean, slab-sided surfaces, so composed, they won the Industrial Design Institute's bronze medal, an honor almost never given to a car. And those rear-hinge suicide doors, they swung backward like a statement. The sedan started at $6,067 in 1961, the convertible at $6,713. A 1966 Continental associated with Martin Luther King Jr. is displayed at the National Civil Rights Museum in Memphis. The Lincoln Continental Mark III, released in 1969, outsold the Cadillac Eldorado in its first model year. The name returned briefly on a 2017 to 2020 model. Then it was gone again, moving through the hierarchy of the GM family, because in 1960, that family had a very clear pecking order, was the Cadillac Fleetwood. It shared all of the DeVille's luxury, but rode on a wheelbase 3.5 inches longer, at 133 inches total, providing rear seat room that made a man feel like he was being transported rather than driving. The Fleetwood Brougham, arriving in 1966, added a padded vinyl roof, walnut interior trim, lighted writing tables, footrests, and individual reading lamps. In 1973, the D'Elegance package brought pillow-style velour seating for an extra $750. In 1974, the Talisman option created 4 individual throne seats with a center console spanning the entire cabin, the most opulent American interior of its era. It cost $2,450 extra on top of the already expensive base car. The last body-on-frame Fleetwood was built in 1996. That's the year something irreplaceable ended. Here's a name that surprises some people, but not anyone who grew up in a black household: the Chevrolet Impala. It wasn't the most expensive car on this list. The 1958 Sport Coupe started at $2,586, but for families working toward the dream, the Impala was the first step that felt like a rival. Historians called it a junior-grade Cadillac, which for both the company and its customers was just fine. In 1965, the Impala did something no single car nameplate had ever done before or since. It sold over 1 million units in a single model year. 1 million. And the engine options ran from the refined 283 V8 all the way to the thunderous 409, the one the Beach Boys made famous, the one that earned 425 horsepower and turned heads at every stoplight in America. The Impala's production line finally went dark in February 2020. A 60-year run. Over. Few things said serious money the way the Oldsmobile 98 did. The 98 was Oldsmobile's flagship for 55 consecutive years, from 1941 to 1996. It rode on the same GMC body platform as the Buick Electra and the Cadillac, close enough to Cadillac prestige to matter, different enough in price to be attainable. Malcolm X drove a 1963 98, black 4-door hardtop, and that car is now displayed at Malcolm X College in Chicago. Public Enemy dedicated a song to it. At its widest point, the 1972 98 offered 64.3 inches of front shoulder room, a measurement no car matched until the 1990s. You weren't just sitting in a car, you were situated. When Oldsmobile died in April 2004 after 107 years, the 98 was already long gone. Both of them vanished together into history. The Buick Riviera was, and many still argue remains, the most beautiful American car ever designed. Bill Mitchell at GM created a roofline he said was inspired by a Hooper-bodied Rolls-Royce he glimpsed through fog in London. The 1963 original was deliberately limited to just 40,000 units its first model year. Exclusivity by design at $4,333 base. The 1971 to 1973 boat tail Riviera, with its dramatic V-shaped fastback rear glass, inspired by the 1963 Corvette Stingray, is one of the most intensely collected American automobiles today. Over its 36-year production run, just over 1 million Rivieras were built in total. The final 1999 model year saw only 1,956 cars produced, including 200 Silver Arrow Special Editions. 1,956 cars. That's how a legend ends. Not with a crash, with a whisper. The Pontiac Bonneville carried Pontiac's revolutionary wide-track stance, wheels pushed further outboard than any competitor, on a frame that pushed Pontiac to third place in total American car sales every year from 1962 to 1970, at $3,260 to $4,000 through the decade. This was genuine luxury that working families could reach for and sometimes touch. Triple two-barrel carburetors on the 389 V8, called Tri-Power, could push 348 horsepower out of a family sedan. In 1965, 134,663 Bonnevilles were sold. When Pontiac was killed in GM's 2009 bankruptcy reorganization, officially expiring in January 2010, it took the Bonneville, discontinued 5 years earlier, with it into the grave. 84 years of Pontiac, gone in a bankruptcy filing. Nobody talked about the Chrysler 300-liter series casually. They called it the banker's hot rod. The 196300F packed a 413 cubic inch V8, producing between 375 and 400 horsepower, the most powerful American production car of its moment, at an MSRP of $5,411. Only 1,217 were ever made. The rarest of all, the 1963 300J, exists in approximately 400 total examples. The letter series ran from 300B through 300L, ending in 1965. Each one a hand-built argument that performance and luxury weren't opposites. Let me tell you about a car that quietly rewrote the engineering rulebook. The Oldsmobile Toronado of 1966 was the first mass-produced American front-wheel drive automobile since the Cord 810 back in 1937. GM engineers ran the drivetrain through over 1 million test miles before releasing it to the public. The 425 cubic inch V8 produced 385 horsepower, 0 to 60 in 7.5 seconds, top speed of 135 miles per hour in a luxury coupe. It was designed from a 1962 painting called Flame Red Car and featured hidden headlights behind a body-colored grille. Motor Trend gave it Car of the Year in 1966. It disappeared with the rest of Oldsmobile in 2004. The Pontiac Grand Prix was Bunky Knudson's answer to the Ford Thunderbird, a personal luxury coupe with stacked vertical headlights, a concave rear window, and so little chrome that automotive writers called it the understated overachiever. The 1969 redesign nearly quadrupled sales overnight, from 32,000 to 112,486 units, with its long hood, short deck, and cockpit interior that felt more aircraft than automobile. The 428 V8 with 390 horsepower made it the most powerful Grand Prix ever offered. Over its lifetime, more than 4.2 million Grand Prix were sold. The name died in 2008. The brand died 2 years later. The Ford Thunderbird didn't just join the personal luxury market, it invented it. When Ford added a rear seat in 1958, the formula was complete. Four-seat comfort, two-door elegance, V8 power, and a price point at $4,486 in 1964. The 1966 model introduced sequential turn signals in the taillights, an industry first still copied today. 92,000 T-Birds sold in 1964 alone. The name was revived in 2002 with a retro design that won Motor Trend Car of the Year but couldn't sustain the dream. Final production, 2005. Where Cadillac was the acknowledged king, the Imperial by Chrysler was the challenger nobody talks about enough anymore. Chrysler broke Imperial off as its own separate luxury mark in 1955, determined to take the fight directly to Cadillac and Lincoln. The hand-built Crown Imperial Ghia limousine, assembled in Italy at one per month, cost $18,500 in the early 1960s, the equivalent of roughly $195,000 today. Only 132 were ever made. The standard Imperial Crown ran from $5,400 to $7,599. Powered by the legendary 440 cubic inch V8, Imperial never solved its identity crisis, sold at the same dealers as cheaper Chryslers, never quite achieving Cadillac's separate aura. By 1975, it was gone, an entire brand erased. The Mercury Park Lane occupied the sweet middle distance between Ford's value and Lincoln's prestige, and it did it beautifully. The 1960 model, at $3,800 to $4,020, with a 430 cubic inch V8 producing 310 horsepower, was Lincoln-adjacent luxury at a price families could actually plan toward. When Mercury died on January 4, 2011, 72 years of American automotive history closed quietly in a press release. The Buick Wildcat was Buick's performance statement: bucket seats, a center console, a tachometer, and the same 401 nailhead V8 as the flagship Electra 225, all in a sportier body. From 1962 to 1970, it gave younger buyers a way into Buick Prestige with a little more fire underneath. Production hit 63,615 in 1965, gone by 1970, replaced by a car nobody remembers as well. The Buick LeSabre was the gateway, the car that told the world you were moving in the right direction. 3 venti ports instead of 4. Entry-level Buick, which still meant something in 1960. At $2,755 to start, it was achievable. And once you got there, you looked across the dealership floor at the Electra 225 and you started saving again. The LeSabre ran all the way to 2005, its nameplate outlasting most of the dream. The Dodge Charger of 1968 was something different, least Sunday best, more Saturday night. That redesigned body, the Coke bottle fastback, the tunneled rear window, the hidden headlights behind a body-colored grille. It was aggression made elegant. Sales exploded from 15,788 in 1967 to 96,100 in 1968. The 440 Magnum 5.8 produced 375 horsepower. The 426 Hemi produced 425. On December 22, 2023, at the Brampton, Ontario assembly plant, the last V8 Charger rolled off the line, the last American V8 sedan, the last of its kind, and then, above all of it, a category unto itself, was the Rolls-Royce Silver Shadow. In 1965, it cost $19,700, $200,000 in today's money, roughly 4 times the price of a Cadillac DeVille. Rolls-Royce famously refused to publish a horsepower figure, stating only that it was sufficient. And for a black man in 1965, America, a country that told him in 1,000 different ways that he did not belong, that he had not arrived, that there was no table set for him, pulling up in a Silver Shadow, said something that no law could touch. Sammy Davis Jr. drove a 1963 Silver Cloud, 3 drop-head coupe. Muhammad Ali, Duke Ellington, Nat King Cole, Sugar Ray Robinson, men who had earned the right to declare in the most unmistakable terms available that they had made it. The Silver Shadow is still made today, now under BMW ownership, one of the few on this list to survive. But the specific electricity of what it meant in that era, in those streets, belongs to a moment that cannot be retrieved. We end where the heart lives, with a car that never cost more than some used models on this list, but whose absence today says something profound about what we've surrendered. The Chevrolet Impala SS, not just the Impala, the Super Sport, bucket seats, center console, a 409 V8 that made grown men stop walking. In the black community, from Watts to Harlem, from Houston's 3rd Ward to Chicago's South Side, the Impala Super Sport was the car that represented the bridge between where you were and where your parents dreamed you'd go. It was the car young men washed by hand on Saturday afternoons under a hot sun, radio on because the pride of that machine was earned, not granted. Its last V8 roared in 2016. The nameplate itself died in 2020, and there is no modern equivalent. Not really. No car sold today carries that specific weight of collective aspiration, communal pride, and hard-won arrival. What was taken from us wasn't just metal and engineering. It was a language. In a country that blocked black families from the lunch counter, the swimming pool, the good neighborhood, the FHA loan, a 225-inch Cadillac with a 500 cubic inch V8 was a complete, unanswerable sentence. Scholars now document what the community always knew. Buying that Cadillac was described by one cultural historian as a personal victory against racism, where the public act of driving one's automobile placed one on the same social level as white Americans. Black buyers had literally saved Cadillac from extinction during the Great Depression, paying white intermediaries $300 premiums, equivalent to $6,800 today, just for the privilege of purchasing the car at all. And then, in 1960, they saved up 16 months of income and bought it anyway, because dignity isn't discouraged by difficulty, it's made more necessary by it. A perfect storm of oil crises, emissions regulations, Japanese imports, and corporate collapse killed these cars one by one. Oldsmobile in 2004, Pontiac in 2010, Mercury in 2011, the Cadillac DeVille in 2005, the Lincoln Continental in 2020, the last V8 Charger in 2023. The stage where these machines performed their declaration, those Sunday parking lots, those long, straight boulevards, those moments of arrival, is still here. The cars that walked onto it are not. They were chrome-plated armor for people who needed it, and the world will not make them again. Thank you, genuinely so, for spending this time with us on this journey back through something that shaped a generation. If this trip down memory lane hit something in you, do me one small favor. Hit that like button right now. And if you know somebody who remembers pulling up to church in a deuce and a quarter, or somebody whose daddy had a Fleetwood out front, share this with them today. They deserve to see it. And if you want more stories like this one, history nobody else is telling, subscribe and come home every time we post. We'll be here.